Hey there guys, how are you all doing? This is Rob, welcome back to the channel, and today I have put this off for a couple of weeks, but I think it's finally time that I discuss Nintendo at the Game Awards. Obviously, I've waited to the 11th hour to actually have this discussion about the Game Awards in any way, shape, or form on the channel this year, because the morning I'm recording this and the day that you'll see this go live is Wednesday, December 6th, and the show is actually going to happen tomorrow evening on Thursday, December 7th. But I still think that this is plenty of time to have a meaningful discussion and get it out there for you guys to digest and to hear and to think about and share some of your own thoughts. I know plenty of other people have already been discussing it online and on Twitter and on YouTube, but I obviously want to very seriously get into the whole idea of Nintendo maybe being present with any kind of surprises at the award show. As far as awards, that's a different conversation I'll talk about, but when we think about new games and surprise reveals and Nintendo's general weirdness with their relationship with the Game Awards, I think that that is the most interesting and fun thing to talk about. And I have plenty of thoughts over what we can and cannot expect at the show tomorrow. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of the conversation online and on YouTube around Nintendo and the Game Awards has to do with a lot of rumors, things being claimed to be rumors or things being claimed to be leaks. And I think we all know that the majority of 2023 has been filled with a lot of that stuff when it comes specifically to Nintendo, and even more specifically than that, the Switch 2, and it just is what it is. I feel like there is just enough of an onslaught of conversations around Nintendo rumors and leaks, even specific to the Game Awards, that I don't really need to tread into that territory. I think that we've had our fill of that part of the conversation, so I just want to talk about it from more of a theoretical lens. Just what are things that I theorize or think make sense based on analyzing the trends and Nintendo's business and the things that we think might happen. And also, again, very crucially, their history with the Game Awards. So to just get right down to business at this point, do I think we will see some kind of surprise or surprises at the show tomorrow? And I'm doubtful. I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade. I'm not trying to depress anyone, even though, again, I am only guessing. I am not getting into the leaks and rumor territory. I'm trying to think separate from those and more practically. And I don't really see a world where it makes sense for Nintendo to have a big surprise tomorrow. And even more than if it makes sense or not, because there is an argument for why they could and maybe should have something tomorrow. But even separate from that, it's whether or not they will. And I think we've seen enough evidence over the years, especially the last few years in the Switch era, to show us that Nintendo isn't really interested in having big announcements and surprises at the Game Awards show specifically. Now, of course, nothing is impossible, and something I try to remind you guys about in a lot of my conversations on my YouTube channel here is that, especially when it comes to Nintendo, which is a very unique company in how they approach these things, there's always an opportunity for them to change up their patterns. And maybe they normally don't do a thing a certain way, but at any given time, they can make a decision to say, well, now we're going to start doing it this way, or now we're going to do what isn't predictable. So maybe this is the year where Nintendo says we finally are ready for another huge reveal at the Game Awards show. We're not going to save this reveal for our own Nintendo Direct. We're not going to save it for our own press release or our own upload on YouTube or whatever. We're just going to say, here's Metroid Prime 4, here's the Switch 2, here's whatever other huge game that it could be, Mario Kart 9. You know, take your pick. Maybe this is the year they decide to show that big thing at the Game Awards. But I'm just going to go back to the fact that I don't really think that it is something Nintendo is going to do, because they like having the stage to themselves in their own Nintendo Directs. They get so many eyes on their Nintendo Directs. They don't truly need to rely on this larger kind of industry-wide event that is the Game Awards to get their hype and messaging out like some of the other companies maybe do. Nintendo has carved out such a successful niche with, again, so many eyes on these announcements during Nintendo Directs that Nintendo is probably more than happy to wait for their own presentation to say, here's the Switch 2 or here's Metroid Prime 4 or whatever. I mean, if we think about the times that Nintendo has had a big announcement at the Game Awards in the Switch era, I don't think there's very many of them. The ones that come to mind, and they're all years ago, would have been the Bayonetta 2 and 3 ports, and then the announcement of Bayonetta 3. That was probably their single biggest announcement because it included a huge new game, Bayonetta 3, and I want to say that was the 2017 Game Awards, the year the Switch launched. And then they also announced, when was this? They also announced Joker as a Smash Brothers DLC character. God, was that the same Game Awards? I should have looked up these dates, so forgive me, I'm just going off the cuff here. But anyway, many, many years ago, that probably would have been 2018 based on when Smash released. So it's been 5 or 6 years, basically, since their last big announcements, right? Which is, they had Breath of the Wild DLC they announced in 2017. They announced Bayonetta 3. They announced a Smash Brothers DLC character 5, 6, 7 years ago. And that's really it. Since then, they don't make any huge announcements. No one from Nintendo, like Reggie used to, has appeared to actually speak with Jeff Keighley at one of these shows and say, hey, we're Nintendo, these are the things we're doing, here's this great new announcement. Like, they don't do those things anymore, and they definitely don't do them at the Game Awards. Lest I mention one more time that I think part of the reason that is simply because they like having the attention all to themselves. A few people have mentioned this online, and I have to agree with this point. Let's pretend Nintendo was going to reveal a new 3D Mario game or Metroid Prime 4 at the Game Awards tomorrow, this year in 2023. The problem I think Nintendo would see with this, whether it's true or not, you can debate it, but when I think of what Nintendo would think about that choice, they would probably say, we don't want Metroid Prime 4's announcement or a new Mario game or Mario Kart game. We don't want that announcement to get buried amongst a slew of other big games for other non-Nintendo devices and competitors, you know? If they announce Bloodborne 2, or if they announce, I don't know, The Last of Us 3, or some other new Halo game, or just anything else that's like a huge deal release, another Final Fantasy game, that kind of thing gets buried amongst all of those other announcements. And sure, it's going to get some headlines and we will all know about it and pay attention to it. Oh my god, Metroid Prime 4 was shown at the Game Awards. But the wider public just sees it as one in a list of many other massive announcements that might actually happen tomorrow. And, as I mentioned, Nintendo has already spent over a decade crafting a huge niche with their Nintendo Directs. And they used to be very small in terms of focus and people that paid attention to them. But nowadays, Nintendo Directs are massive events, and the whole industry pays attention to them. Not just diehard Nintendo fans, and not even just media outlets that are going to report on it, but almost everyone who is a game fan, even non-Nintendo fans, most of them tune in to Nintendo Directs. So Nintendo gets their messaging out to so many people at such a regular cadence. We are conditioned to expect them. We are conditioned to expect 1 or 2 huge announcements with each one. So Nintendo, again, doesn't need Jeff Keighley's show to get a Metroid Prime 4 or a Mario 3D game announcement to the people. They can do it in January or February with their own Direct, and it would actually probably make more headlines than if they did it at the Game Awards. But I will remind you guys again, last major point here is that there is always the opportunity for Nintendo to change their mind. I think that most of the things I've discussed in here, that makes sense to me on why I don't think Nintendo is probably planning on making a huge reveal tomorrow. And I mean, talking about the Switch 2 is crazy. And it's tricky because, you know, Microsoft set the precedence by announcing the Xbox Series X and revealing it for the first time at the Game Awards a few years ago, which was shocking. And so now we've seen one of the 3 companies reveal their next-gen hardware and show it to the world at a Game Awards show. So it has happened now. The seal has been broken. And so, sure, maybe Nintendo would do that with the Switch 2, but again, does that feel like the right choice? It's tough to say. But if we go back into trying to find any reason to say why we maybe could expect a big reveal from Nintendo at the show, whether it's Metroid or Mario or hell, even if it's the Switch 2, even if they're going to blow our minds and do the Switch 2. And it's the fact that even though I spent a lot of time saying that Nintendo prefers their own audience watching their Nintendo Directs, there is a case to be made for the fact that a different kind of audience, or so many eyes in a different way, are going to see your announcement at a Game Awards show where every other company might be making big announcements. And to even spin this a little bit more on its head and play devil's advocate to even myself in this conversation, you could say that Nintendo revealing just new hardware at an event like the Game Awards might actually be a very smart way to do it. As opposed to a big game like Metroid or Mario Kart or whatever, just the hardware, that is a pretty good venue to do so. And maybe that's why Microsoft chose to do it with the Series X, because it's just the hardware. And that would actually probably become the biggest talking point of the whole show. And everyone there sees, oh my God, that's the Switch 2. Now we know what it is. And Nintendo just teases it, shows it, and says, tune in January, where we're going to tell you a whole lot more about it and show you some games or whatever. So there is a reason to think Nintendo is going to surprise us tomorrow. There is a value to the audience watching the Game Awards. I still think Nintendo maybe doesn't care about that audience the way we would. But again, maybe they change their mind and do it tomorrow. Maybe hardware makes more sense to reveal tomorrow, and then they give us the details later than if they were to show us a new game. You know, I'm just spitballing and theorizing here, like I said. But going into the show tomorrow, that's kind of what I think. I don't know if I'm excited for the show. I've actually, I keep forgetting that the show is even happening this week, that it's tomorrow. It doesn't feel like the Game Awards season. It doesn't even feel like the end of the year. So I'm kind of just like ho-humming my way into the show tomorrow. And if this thing is dragging on at the 2-hour mark, I'm going to stop watching it because I think they're too damn long. There's too many commercial breaks. There's not enough focus on the developers who win awards and put their blood, sweat, and tears into making the games we get to enjoy. And yes, I'm all for the trailers and the surprises too, but I still think there's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done. So I'm a little bit nervous. It's another 3.5-hour affair. And if I'm falling asleep, I'm turning it off, and I'm just going to wait to find out what happens after that, And so, anyway, that's how I feel about the Game Awards. That's what I think we can or maybe can't expect as far as Nintendo having a surprise tomorrow. I'd love to be wrong and see something, so, in a little over 24 hours, I guess we're going to know if Nintendo actually does something. So share your thoughts below, and that's about it.